All right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for coming and making the effort to be here today. You are pleased, hopefully, to be here as I am, and these lovely alumni are as well. So today, as you can see on the screen, and for those of you who can't see the screen, there's the Business Graduate Schemes session, and also a mini expo outside as well. So today's session will hopefully be going into lots of different details about what you can do as a student to sort of build up your skills and experience, hopefully, but always leading to that fabled graduate scheme, which is a goal of a lot of different students out there to get into a graduate scheme. And we're very lucky to be joined today by two alumni who went through that process, so they could tell you all about it. So today, hopefully, will be a chance for you to listen to their stories, ask questions as well, anything that's sticking out to you as maybe being something you're a bit worried about, or any advice that you might seek from people who have been in your shoes. These people, remember, were sitting on that side of the lecture theatre not so long ago, so they're in a very good position to sort of answer your questions today. So without further ado, I'm going to ask each of our alumni in turn just to very briefly introduce yourself, just maybe your name, what you do now, just in a couple of sentences, and then we'll get into more of the nitty-gritty of what you're actually doing and more about what this session will cover. So Ross, do you want to go first?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having us, Craig, and it's great to be back. As Craig mentioned, I'm Ross. I work at British Airways currently. I graduated from the BSc Business Management degree in 2021. Following that, I had an internship with BA in that summer and was offered a place on that graduate scheme in the September shortly after. Since then, I have had 3 years on the Future Leaders scheme, and I've recently, in October of last year, started my permanent role in revenue delivery, which is in our commercial team, and I look after a market in the Africa, Middle East region, essentially doing pricing and inventory and the sort of strategic goals for that route. Hand over to Denitsa.
Yes, thank you. Hi, everyone. As Craig said, lovely having you here. And I do remember also sitting in this hall. So yeah, I do know exactly how you feel. But for me, it's pretty similar journey. I now work for Mars. I also graduated business management in 2020. What a year. And then I basically started my journey with Mars in the grad scheme, which is 3 years. So 3 different roles, 3 different locations. So I started in Denmark, then Spain, then Vienna, so in Austria. And now I'm back to Denmark, doing e-commerce for UK and Nordics as a sales manager, in short.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for that overview. So 2 very different roles as well, which hopefully gives you an idea of the scope of things you can get involved in. I mean, these are 2 different roles you can do. There's very many more out there, but we'll go into a little bit more about the, I guess, detail of how that maybe looked for these 2 people. So, Ross, you touched a little bit on the fact that you did your internship with BA first and then went into the grad scheme. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the process of entering that grad scheme itself and how that sort of looks practically.
Sure, definitely. What I'd just say for the internship as well, I was meant to do it in 2020, but we all know what happened then, and airlines at the time as well, quite difficult period. But following that, I was like literally 2 weeks into a 6-week internship, and there was availability on our graduate scheme, and I was able to do a mini interview for that and enroll onto it. The process for an internship and the grad scheme at BA is almost identical, or at least it was at the time that I applied. So in answer to your question, more specifically, the sort of application process that I went through.
Yeah, so, was it a difficult application process? There was different steps to go through?
The structure of graduate interviews and the stages that you go through are relatively similar, at least from my experience from applying when I was in your position as well. And the initial stage is that sort of first sort of like set of aptitude tests or sort of questions that make sure that you're aligned to what the business and what is well for you is the right path for you. So you do these sort of test questions to find out what graduate scheme or if that graduate scheme is right for you. You progress through to, you send in your CV, you get that initial screening where you do, I'm sure you've maybe experienced it already, but the video interview of where you're being recorded and you're trying to answer questions as they pop up, and you've got a set amount of time to do that. Then progressing through to the final stage for me, which was an in-person interview down in London, and that was a mixture of group work, individual individual strength-based questions. So it's not necessarily about your experience; it's about how you're able to answer and articulate your views with that. And then the final stage as well, there was like a role play exercise. So you're given a task, and you've got to break it down and say why you want to make the decisions that you would in that case. And that structure, I'd say, is probably similar. And I'm sure Denise will be able to answer more for your scheme as well.
Yeah, so do you want to talk about that then? So I suppose graduate schemes are quite competitive, I think, a lot of the time at the end of the day, and there's lots of different steps. They will differ as well. So is your experience similar to that, Denny?
Yeah, absolutely, Ross. I think you covered it pretty well. So I think it's fairly similar to all kind of graduate programs. For Mars was exactly the same process. Maybe there was one or two video calls in between, but I think that's just for you to meet your future manager potentially, and also to understand a bit more if actually that's for you, because it's a long process, right? So it's a lot of commitment and it takes a lot of time. So when you commit to a graduate program, I think halfway through, like a lot of us will be thinking, do I really want this? Like it's been 4 months. So I think this kind of video calls help a lot to actually, for you also to understand, is that the right company, and get a sense of what are the people you're going to be working with. But process-wise, absolutely similar. Yeah.
Good to know. And it's good to touch a little bit on what Denny said there about whether it feels right for you as well. Because I think a lot of the time, it's so competitive trying to get these jobs. And you're often thinking, like, I'll take anyone who'll have me. And, interviews especially are very much seen as a one-way process in your mind, right? Because you're sitting across the table from someone, they're asking you questions, you're having to answer these questions back and forth. But it really should be a lot more of a conversation, because you need to work out if this company is right for you. There's been so many occasions where students will be offered maybe a couple of different graduate schemes or graduate roles, and they gravitate towards the company they had a better experience with. And that's why graduate schemes in general are a good pathway for students, because they're finite. They don't last forever. You don't go into a graduate role with a company and it's sort of a contract that will last however many years until you decide to leave. Quite often it's a defined route, maybe at 2 years, 3 years, sometimes longer. So you can decide, is this right for you? It gives you time to build experience and build confidence, and then take that experience and then use it in whatever way you want to use it. So I think that's a really, really nice point to make. Yeah, do you have something to add?
I definitely agree with you both. It is a two-way process. It's an interview, you querying them as much as them querying you, and if it's the right fit. If it's not the right fit, then if you're not going to enjoy yourself there, that's part of it. You're going to be working there at least 5 days a week normally. So if you don't enjoy it, it's it's may not be the best place to be. But definitely, when you're looking at companies and when you're applying, I'm not sure if you had the same approach, Denny, but I would specifically target and focus on maybe like a max of 5. I wouldn't do mass applications. I wouldn't, and that strategy, not just with myself, but with some of my peers at the time, it appears to have worked quite well. The people who applied for like 50 plus, roles, even if they got an offer in one of those 50 plus roles, were they actually happy in that respect? Now, I appreciate it is a tough process. It is competitive, but don't feel like you need to mass apply and then not be able to refine like your CV, your questions, etc. And adding the value that I had there was being able to, I only applied for 3 things in my final year or 2 things in my final year. And I did get an offer for both of them. So I think it's about, at least in my experience, refining what you want from a company, and particularly from a graduate scheme.
Pardon me. Without a doubt, the targeted approach is the way to go. And if you've ever been in a classroom with me, you'll know that. It's like I want about it totally all the time. But if you're ever having trouble knowing how to target your applications, knowing what to say and what not to say, there's a defined formula to it. You just kind of have to learn it. It's playing the game with them a little bit. We in the career service can support you with that. So if you ever have any individualized questions, come see us. And it sounds like it pays off to do that targeted approach for sure.
Definitely. And just that emphasis on career service, go to the career service, please. Like that, I would not be in my current role if it was not for the career service. I practiced my interview extensively with Caroline, who was there at the time, and I would not have been as well prepared for when I went down for my interview than when I'd had that. And it's getting everything out at that point in time so that you can kind of go and stutter and go, okay, I don't know fully what I'd answer or how I'd approach that question, and then being able to go down and confidently deliver your answer. And that I think definitely makes a difference there. Go.
Sure.
Yeah, maybe just one build here. I absolutely agree with you, Ross, of targeting like maybe 3 places that you really want to work for. Because yes, it's a competitive process, it's energy draining process. And also, you put your hopes up and you're there for the long run. So it's like 5 months of, let's say, applying and going through interviews. So in order just for you to have good energy and to have enough time to actually research the company, especially when it's a global company that does so much in different areas, I think leave yourself a bit of time to actually tailor the approach to that company, which quite honestly just requires time, right? So you need to give yourself that space to read through their, website, all the videos, all the people in LinkedIn that you can find, and you can drop a message and see if you can catch up for a coffee or something and get their experience. And again, just also a bit of to your point, Craig, on the career service, I did use it as well a lot, maybe from a different angle. So apart from practicing interview questions and applications, they can also be super helpful in linking you to people who have done the similar experience or even that work for that company. So I think that's a very useful link. And, you can save yourself a bit of time if they're there for you to help you connect with these people.
Great. Well, thank you. It's nice to hear a positive indictment of us as a service. But before we move on to talk a little bit more about, more in-depth parts of your roles, maybe you'd like to discuss with the people in the room, just so they know a bit more about what you do. I want to touch very briefly on what you said, Denny, about researching the company. It's so important, so important. People don't place enough emphasis on doing research into the company before you apply, because you can have all the skills and experience in the world, but remember, you're applying for a graduate scheme, which the prerequisite for essentially is that you're a graduate. So is everybody else. You have to have something that stands out, something that makes you seem like the person for that company. So you want to have done your research, you want to have looked at the videos on their website, you want to have looked at what they've done on LinkedIn and talking about their successes recently. Also, I saw on LinkedIn last week you were posting about this award that you won for environmental sustainability. I'm really happy to hear that as a company you care about that. I'm also passionate about this. That sort of thing. You need to be making these connections. It needs to go that deep. Just handing an application, matching all the skills and hoping for the best doesn't always get you the whole way. So the more research you can do into the company, the better. All right. So thank you very much for talking to us about, your experiences maybe getting into the graduate schemes themselves. But let's talk a little bit about what you actually do. So for someone who was asking you, Ross, what's a day in your life like at British Airways? What does your job currently entail? Because I think you've recently, a couple of months ago, you've moved positions now, you've got a new job.
Yeah, so I finished my graduate scheme in October. So the area that I've moved into is an area that I experienced when I was on my graduate scheme. So it's in revenue delivery. A day in my life really looks, it can be quite different, but generally I'll be looking at how our intakes are looking for a specific market. So saying, how many people have booked on my specific set of flights across a 365-day selling cycle, and because I'm looking at a long-haul aircraft that's split between 4 different cabins, trying to get the right mix and the right basically getting the right price in the market at the right time to the right people. That is ultimately what I'm trying to do. But you can imagine across an organization as big as BA and the number of flights that we have departing daily is a huge challenge to try and optimize our revenue. And it's important from our own perspective to remain competitive, but also to give the best price to consumers for that. So my day can really range between looking at specific pieces of analysis and saying, what do I need to do to influence my market? Or the one thing that I've done recently is present to our director of revenue management a couple of weeks ago about our strategy for our summer flying for this year for Africa, Middle East. So a whole range of different things that come into that. And one other thing that I've picked up and I've kept going since my time as a graduate is, or on the grad scheme, is flying as cabin crew once every 90 days. So BA really encourages staff who work in the office to also experience our frontline operational challenge, and it's to make sure that we understand fundamentally what's happening and what we can do in our own role to influence that, which I really enjoy, and I thoroughly enjoy speaking to all of our colleagues that are flying as well, which is good fun and to be able to travel. But as part of my grad scheme, we spent 6 months flying as cabin crew, and that is primarily to give us a foundation in how we operate and how that works.
Amazing. Yeah, so a day in the life at Mars, what are you doing at the minute that is exciting you? What projects are you working on that you could...
Great question. Well, we're not flying, but we're eating as much as candy as we want. So I guess that's a good perk. Yeah, but I think a day in a life can vary a lot, especially in sales. So that's like, especially in FMCG. So it's a very dynamic environment, right? So things can change a lot, and there is so many. There is not a routine task per se, and my role specifically is looking after our e-commerce business. So that's all the on-demand delivery to quick commerce, to pure players, to click and mortar customers in the Nordics. I'm sitting in a team that also does the same for the UK. So there is a lot of like links in between, but that would be all the, Deliveroo and Asda online and Tesco online. And it's the equivalent of that in the Nordics. So I get to travel quite a lot, as you can imagine, meet different customers across Finland, Sweden, Denmark, Norway, sometimes back to the UK, and basically develop that channel. So as you can imagine, this is growing so fast. E-commerce is such an interesting area. And especially for that type of brands, we want to be there. We want to be seen, known. We want to be available for everyone that wants a snack or something else. So I'm currently in also our pet care business. So that's something that maybe not many people know, but Mars has a huge pet nutrition business. So that would be brands like Pedigree, Whiskas, Reoch. It's actually the biggest part of the business, which is kind of funny because it's we're all linking it to the Swedes, but it's very purposeful business, and it's very interesting to work in that category because you're not only speaking to the people who are pet owners, but you also somehow need to sell it to the dog and cats, and that's a little bit of a challenge sometimes, but but that's what I do on a daily basis.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for that. And I'm sure they'll stick around at the end if you've got any more specific questions about the ins and outs of their jobs, if you're interested maybe in working for these companies. But I thought we could bring it back now to your time at Dundee. So, you've obviously been here, done that, now doing something else, something very exciting and new, but, you had a journey of getting there. So I was wondering if you could maybe touch a little bit on, maybe if you think back to your studies, or it doesn't have to be related to your studies, maybe just your time on campus. Is there anything that you sort of learned here, or anything you feel that you've developed here that you still use, maybe on a day-to-day basis in your job now, that maybe it could be skills you use or ways of dealing with situations? Denny, you can go first and share it.
All right. Great. Actually, I'll probably touch more on the soft skills, right? Because Ross and I had a chat before that things in our environments change so quickly that sometimes when you are 2 years into the working environment, like a lot of things that you guys maybe study now would have changed a little bit. However, there is a very I think, good ground on building those network skills and building those connections with others that really stick with me when I start working for Mars, because it's a lot about how do you present yourself, how do you link, how you communicate with others, how you communicate with customers, with clients, and so on. And what more is that I think Dundee, it's overall very entrepreneurial. And don't underestimate that, because when you go into a company that people come from different places, I think you start to realize that you've had such a great entrepreneurial, innovative environment here that helps you think quick on your feet, helps you come up with different suggestions, different ideas, and quickly link things together. So if you have watched like the newest M&M's advert and all the other sneakers ads we do online, I've been part of some of them in my first year as part of marketing. And that's a lot about thinking, how can we take this a bit out of the box? How can be different? How can be unique and diverse? Which is something I learned here, honestly. So don't underestimate that part of your education here. That was a long answer.
That was a great answer.
Right.
And I think I'm sure they'd be happy that we're plugging them just now. But I mean, the Centre for Entrepreneurship is right there, next door. They did recently just win Entrepreneurial University of the Year, or maybe just overall in Europe. University of Dundee was named the most entrepreneurial university in Europe. So there's things actually going on all around you, even if you're not currently engaging them. So do, because you can learn a lot from it, and you can have that stamp and say, well, I graduated from the most entrepreneurial lady in Europe. So good point. And yeah, you were a part of the Centre for Entrepreneurship, weren't you? You were here.
Yeah.
I remember you had some leadership role there, didn't you?
Exactly. Yeah. I started as part of the team and then became team lead I saw the Entrepreneurial Week going on. So yeah, I've been part of the organization of this, and it does really give you this kind of a soft skills that you need in your career after. And honestly, use this on the interviews as well. I think that was one of the things that I definitely stand out by saying.
Yeah. Okay, good. Excellent, thank you. Ross, what about yourself? Maybe things you've done here can still take away to this day.
Definitely the problem solving and critical thinking element. I mean, that's why you're at uni, is to develop your skills to spot problems, and they will come up in every role that anyone ever does. There will be an issue, there will be something that you need to solve, and I think uni is good at taking that as a question and trying to break it down and say how you would respond in an articulated way. When a senior leader comes to you with a problem, you're meant to be the one that comes with a solution. When you go to anyone in a business and you know that there's an issue, you need to sort of have a solution in the back of your mind. So I think that as a core is fundamental for uni. But outside of that, in my day-to-day role, there's a fair amount of economics. So I did do an economics module in my first year, and looking at like constrained and unconstrained demand, or it's just just supply and demand basically, is fairly simple in that respect. But outside of that as well, Excel. I'm sure you've all used Excel, or I'd hope you all used Excel, and particularly looking at more like advanced functions, it becomes really beneficial. And even if you can, using a little bit of coding, I don't think I actually had that experience at uni, and I'm not sure if it's something that any of you have had a bit of experience with, but even just getting to grips with some SQL or some aspects of that would be really beneficial. But yeah, I circle back to Excel mainly because I did it in a lot of my finance modules or accountancy. I remember using it, and that has been definitely beneficial where I am now.
Good stuff. And I think it's important to not just say you've done these things. So, for example, on a CV, right? Quite often people will have University of Dundee and then the title of their degree, and that'll just kind of be it. But you can expand on that. Bullet point relevant module. Bullet point things you did in those modules that are relevant to the job you're applying for. So it could be something like Excel. It could be you're applying for, a business analytics role or something like that, and you need to display some sort of, knowledge in analytics and working with numbers and things. So you can say, used Microsoft Excel effectively to do, they'd be really specific, to do X, which had Y outcome. It needs to be outcome driven. The evidence needs to be there. People don't do that. Most people don't do that on their CV. So you will be able to articulate a lot more than you think just from your studies. I know a lot of you sort of maybe will go to class, maybe pay attention most of the time. Maybe go to the library and do some assignments, hand in your assignments, you go home for the day, actually done. But the more thought you put into what you're actually learning and what you're actually doing, write it down, take notes, journal for yourself, even if you're interested in that. Think about what you're actually doing in class on a daily basis, because you can use it as evidence for jobs, interviews, and CVs. You're not just here at uni for a year, 3 years, 4 years, however long you're here, to just say you've got a degree. Everybody else can do that too. So the more depth you go into what you've actually learned, the better. So I'm glad you picked up on that. And there's stuff about critical thinking and stuff as well, try and go to classes, try and, get involved in the class discussion when you are there, put your hand up, ask questions, because you're going to have to do it whenever you graduate. So get the practice in now, because you don't want to be caught like a deer in the headlights when you're in your first graduate job and your manager's sitting in a meeting and everyone's kind of looking at you expectantly to contribute. You're just kind of sitting there. We're in a safe environment here. So use that time to develop those skills to be able to be like, so can I just double check, why are you doing it that way? Or can I just double check, why is that theory the way it is? Or what do you think about that? If you've been teaching this for a couple of years, what are your thoughts behind this? Just ask questions of people in classroom settings, and it will translate very well to when you are working. A lot of you will have professional experience already. You'll maybe be coming here to do a second degree or whatever, but still important to leave the uni with the degree on your CV, but stuff underneath the degree as well, because otherwise people will be like, well, what did they do the whole time they were here? So thank you for picking up on that. It's a good point.
That definitely would also just mention that, I've been involved in the last 2 rounds of our graduate recruitment over the last 2 years, and we are not hiring the degree, we are hiring the person. So put as much emphasis into yourself, learning the skills, and even outside of your degree. I was president of a society here that was related to aviation. That was, really useful for me to talk about in my own, my own journey. So definitely capture all of that when you have your CV and just try and emphasize the skills that you've gained from it.
Yeah.
I think, thanks for saying this, Ross, because it made me think that also use and, develop your creativity. I think I'm speaking more of a less engineering heavy, but more marketing heavy company. But this is also something that we are looking for, right? So just to give you an example of the last round of the recruitment process of Mars, there was a business case, right, that you probably have for many of the graduate schemes. And one of the questions was, what would it look like if we mix 2 products together? You can decide which one could be, just present it to us. So I had to present in front of those senior leaders of how would that look like, why, to market it, to sell it, to build the whole story. So I think, also try to always, as Craig said, question this, use the experience of your lecturers or a career service or your peers of what, if that's true, what else is true? How can I develop that and use this on those situations in business cases, in creative thinking, in how to, impress your graduate scheme of choice.
That's it, pardon me. And it will impress them, because if uni was just a way to get a job, it wouldn't be the way it is. If you were able to just go get a job right now, if you were able to just leave school and go get one of these jobs, then there would be no need for uni. The whole point of uni is that it should develop you a higher level of thinking, a way of critiquing, a way of questioning things. They're wanting that stuff. They're not wanting the piece of paper with a degree on it. Otherwise, they just pick anybody off the street and get them to come work for them and train them, right? They're looking for people that they don't need to do that with. Uni is your training ground. Uni is your time to develop all these skills. And the earlier, some of you are here maybe first, second, or third year. Some of you may be graduating next year. But whatever stage you're at, it's not too late to STEM. You've got the rest of the semester to practice this. So make sure you are, is my advice. And then, especially if you're in a younger year set at the moment, when you do come to us in third year, fourth year, you're applying for things like summer internships or graduate schemes and things like that. It's not going to be as difficult because you've already got most of the tools that you need. We can just maybe help you a little bit to articulate them properly. But when you come to us in fourth year and you say, help, I'm about to graduate and I've not done any of this yet, then there's very little that we can do to support at that point. So spread that message around for the people who aren't here as well. It's really, really, really important. And I know a lot of people in this room today do engage very nicely with a lot of what we do, and it's very much appreciated. So thank you. Okay, great. So I've come, I guess, to the end of my formal questioning. So we'll hand over to maybe people in the room to ask questions now if they have any. But it wouldn't be an alumni session. And Martina would be very upset if I didn't mention the key alumni question that we always ask alumni when they come back to campus. But, we'll get a bit nostalgic, shall we? So if you were sitting in this room right now, if you were at this side of the table, what advice would you give yourself? If you could go back now and you were still a student, what is the main piece of advice you would give yourself, knowing what you know now?
Well, thank you.
No pressure.
No.
So I graduated, during COVID, and if you asked me in the January of 2021 what I was going to do, I would not be able to tell you. I was stressed out of my mind with my dissertation, and I can imagine that anyone who's in fourth year is, going through that probably right now. And it will be okay. Like, you will get to the end of your degree. And to be honest, if you look at the entry requirements for a lot of different graduate roles or even entry level roles, last time I checked, our entry requirement for our scheme is a 2-2. So we are not, as I emphasized, we are not just taking the bit of paper for your degree. It's about you as a person, and what skills you bring to the role, and particularly how you can, help improve the organization. That's ultimately what we're looking for. So, everything may be stressful. It may, I got to a point where I was severely stressed in that last semester. I'd just say it's not worth, going between a first or a 2-2 or, a 2-1 or a first or a 2-1 or a 2-1 and a 2-2. If it is really stressing you out and you've got loads of other commitments and you have to do that, don't, put too much pressure on yourself, but at the same time, do as well as you can. But just, it will work out, and just keep going for it.
That's great advice. From my side, I think, to be very honest with you guys, like when I was fourth year and I was applying for all these graduate programs and I was going to their assessment centers in Ireland and in London after that, I got a bit discouraged, like being in a room with a lot of other graduates from different universities, seeing how motivated they are, how everyone is really fighting for that maybe one place. I got a little bit upset maybe and discouraged, thinking I'll not make it. Who am I to come and compete here? Maybe I'll never get into these graduate programs. So my advice to you is keep your head up. And keep remembering that you're coming from a great place, great university, great safe space for you to keep practicing this throughout the years. You have same chance just as anybody else. And yes, these kind of assessment centers and interviews can seem a bit intimidating and a bit scary, but you deserve just as much to be there and to be part of those companies. And I think once you get this kind of self-confidence and just going and knowing that you're going to smash it, trust me, most likely you will. And I would have never thought that I would, be living in 3 different countries, traveling with Mars around Europe and outside, doing what I really love to do right now, because I lost a bit of that hope halfway through. So maybe don't do that and keep believing that you will succeed. And if it's not the first one that you really like, it might be the second one, but you never know. That might be actually the best one for you. So keep your head up.
Great. Fantastic advice. It's all about practice. You need to put yourself out there. What if your dream graduate scheme or role comes out and you're interviewing for it and it's your first interview ever? You might not perform as well. You might have had some failures and some knockbacks before that, but it's actually taught you how to interview better. It's taught you how to speak to people. It's taught you what they're expecting. So don't limit yourself. Apply for things, go do things. If you don't enjoy it, you never have to do it again. Just don't go back, whether that's some sort of event on campus, whether it's an activity or whatever. But you're never going to know until you do it. Just go do it. A lot of these things are like an hour out of your week on campus, maybe, if that. I know a lot of you are very busy, but take the time out to do it, because you will lose that opportunity and you'll have to do everything for yourself after you do graduate. So we are here to support you and we're more than happy to help you through that process. But just get involved, very much get involved, and you will be well on your way to becoming one of these 2 lovely people at the front of the room here today. who are very active on campus, by the way. They're being very modest. They're both excellent students and got involved in a lot of different things, which is a testament to how far they've come till now. So fantastic. So as I say, that brings me to the end of my formal questioning, my list of hastily scribbled down notes in front of me, but it's an Ask Alumni session after all. So let's ask the alumni. Does anybody in the room have any questions they'd like to ask?
Yeah.
Go for it. So we might need to...
Actually, talking to a few people outside. I'm wrapping up from India. So, I'll be graduating in September 26. 26. So after that, I'll be applying for my PSW for 2 years. So when I spoke with few people there, the organizations there, so the graduate route visa is being like a 3 years contract or something. So how it works, I'll be having a 2 years post-study work visa, but this contradicts with the 3 years of the contract. So will I be getting a work visa for another 1 year, or which visa I'll be getting?
I might be able to answer this for the UK. So I don't know the specifics of the visa, but I know that there's a grad in the year below me who was in a similar sort of position, and BA sponsored them to be able to do the graduate scheme with us. So I don't know the ins and outs of how that works, but I think if you wanted to know more specifically for BA, I think we have advice on our website. If you just do graduate careers at British Airways, or we also have a portal called Speedbird Z, which is really useful if anyone does want to apply for any of our schemes, but that should hopefully give you more guidance for that. But I know from my experience, the colleague who's in the year below was from India as well. So I think it was a similar question.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty similar for Mars as well. I think once after you're through this initial screening, you have an opportunity to actually speak with one of the HR managers and ask all of those questions. So I think they are pretty, at least they ask me whether I need support in that. So I'm sure that they will ask the same questions and you'll be able to explain your specific situation and take it from there.
So thank you.
Yes.
I want to ask you, Denitsa, how did you handle the assessment center being overwhelmed with all the people who were there and you feeling intimidated on all that?
Good question.
Yeah, very good question. To share with you very much of a real story. So as I said, I applied for 3 different graduate programs. And actually, one of them had an assessment center in London before Mars. So I was able to actually go there first. It's another FMCG company. I was very excited for it. I went there extremely stressed. They sent me, so they had 2 offices there. So they sent me the location of the other office. I went there like half an hour earlier, like all ready and set and nervous, only to realize that that's not the right office. Rushed back to the actual one, arrived when everyone was already in the room, getting ready to present, stumbled across the room and spilled like the glass of water that I was carrying. Everyone just turned. So it was a big failure. And I felt, as you said, like extremely intimidated. So I had a bit, like maybe 10 minutes to pull myself together and to, I think, do a bit of self-talk of I only have this opportunity to show at my best in this specific place. And you know what, like that might not be my place, as it turns out not to be. However, like I'll do my best just to practice. And I took it as a practice route. It started horribly. I may or may not have made a very bad impression. That can happen to all of us, right? But that can be a practice round. I did that, and maybe a week later they called me from Mars for their assessment center. I can tell you that I show up there with all the confidence in the world because, I mean, what can go wrong after that kind of experience in London, right? Unless maybe I was carrying a coffee, that would have been worse. But I think I already learned how to handle it. So a lot of those assessment centers will be the same. So my advice is maybe just practice. That gives you so much more confidence to go to the one that maybe you desire the most. And worst comes to worst, you might actually get in the ones that you think you perform bad. So, I mean, that's probably going to be my approach to it.
Okay.
That's excellent advice. Definitely practice. I mean, I do practice interviews, practice assessment centers with students all the time. And I feel the most confidence in the world. If I ever had to interview for a job ever again in my life, I would be sorted because I just know how to get myself in that zone now. I know the sorts of things that people want to hear at the end of the day. It is like playing a game a little bit. You obviously have to be confident. You have to have the skills to back up. But I am only confident doing that because I've done it so many times in practice for them. So really good advice. Definitely practice. Don't allow yourself to be scared to take an opportunity, because even if you feel like it's too early, take it and learn, and then you can go ahead from there. Fantastic advice. Sorry, I'm stealing the spotlight from you. Any more questions from the audience? Yes.
What was the most enjoyable part of your graduate schools?
Good question.
You want to say?
Yeah, happy to. So I didn't get the opportunity to travel because of COVID and everything else, and I didn't take a year out before uni or anything like that. So what was really unique about BA's graduate scheme for the future leaders is that we have at least a 3-month period. In my case, it was 6 months because we were recovering after COVID and they needed us. But we flew as cabin crew for that period of time. And I know I've emphasized it already, the importance of knowing the front end operation. What are we actually delivering for customers? Are we doing are we doing the right thing? And I think that was really a great starting point for me, just to understand how everything works, as well as be able to travel. And that was long haul and short haul, so it was great fun. And alongside that, being able to, so I trained with with some of my grads as well as other colleagues, and just spending 6 weeks together going through that sort of training, it kind of builds a cohesion with other grads, which you really need, because that is then your network for when you finish the grad scheme. And I'm still very close with a lot of our cohort who were there. So just taking those opportunities there, definitely.
I think for me, also a big one was the travel. Being able to live in Copenhagen, Barcelona, and Vienna is such a privilege that you don't really get straight out of uni in my eyes before. So that was like a big thing for me, just exploring different cultures, being able to see how business operate in different cities. But maybe another thing is that from day one, Mars connects you in their graduate program with your mentor. So for me, that was a lady that was a general manager of Africa's business. So it was so inspiring to me to see a woman that has succeeded so much in such an environment in South Africa that can actually give me an advice of how did she got there, and she can mentor me throughout those 3 years of where I want to go. So it's a space where I felt like, I can raise any sort of from career concerns to, am I doing the right thing, to, is this graduate program for me after all? So that was a big thing for me.
Thanks. Yes, on the question. Yeah, come back. Or was that you can go first, since you're going to ask one, yeah.
I just wanted to ask Ross, where were you based for your graduate scheme, and where are you based now? And also, Denitsa, I know you said you lived in 3 different places. So did Mars help you with relocation, and how did that work out?
Sure.
I'll go first, and just so I'm based at London Heathrow. So we've got a headquarters literally a 5-minute drive from Terminal 5, and I've been there for my whole grad scheme. I did have to move down myself, which if anyone is moving to London and wants advice, I'm happy to give advice on that as well. But I was literally moving down by myself, not really much of an idea of where exactly I should live or what I should do. So I think that I did manage to get advice in the end from some of the other interns or grads who were there. But it's moving from Dundee to London was quite a change.
And for me, Mars supported the whole reallocation all these 3 years. And I also was lucky enough to get from them language courses. So I did Spanish, and then I did German, and then I did Danish back in Copenhagen. So very, very lucky in that sense. And it was fully supported for our graduate program in UK and the rest of Europe as well.
Pass. Right. Yes, yeah.
Hi, Ross. Wanted to ask you, after working in different departments in your undergraduate role, did you end up choosing the revenue delivery executive, or else it was assigned to you that probably you did most, you performed most was to being trained?
Sure. So our graduate schemes each have a different way of rolling off. So I know our commercial grad schemes, as well as some of the others, have a set route. So they will be guaranteed to roll off at the end of their scheme. My scheme, it's a fixed term contract. So within like the last sort of 6 months, you apply to certain roles that are available at that point in time. I really enjoyed my time in revenue management when I did have that opportunity. So I really wanted to join that team. There's a variety of different roles that other grads have gone into, everything from operations to recruitment to, you name it pretty much, or cabin crew or marketing or anything. So it is a really great scheme that gives you the foundation to rotate. So I rotated through 3 different placements. I spent time in recruitment, I spent time in network planning as well, and also some time in revenue management. So it gives you a wide range there.
And just to add to that as well, I think I've been speaking to other students who've done grad schemes recently, and I think, they are largely supportive of your choices. So there was a student who came to one of my classes last week who's a grad doing grad scheme with Scottish Water, and she was saying that they're supposed to rotate departments every 6 months, but she finished her 6-month placement and decided that she really liked the team she was in, so she actually just stayed there for her next 6 months as well. So I think the scope to really fit at what makes you tick and what you really enjoy is there for a lot of them. And it might not be for all of them, but just keep that in mind. It's something you can do when you're doing your research into them or speaking to them before you apply. It's one of the things you can ask them about, I suppose. It shows interest in one specific area might be quite good.
Yeah, definitely speak to the grads if you can, or drop them a message on LinkedIn and say, how did you progress through your scheme? I did get a choice in some respects, but because we were building back from COVID, the first pretty much year and a half, I had no choice in what I was allowed, basically doing at the time. But Denny, I don't know if you had a different experience.
I think it's fairly similar for us. Was also about, and maybe that's one of the things that you're building here, right? As a capabilities, like being able to reach out to other people, either for advice or for some guidance, because the graduate program is also built a lot around this. So no one would guarantee you that you want to be a brand manager of M&Ms and you will be a brand manager of M&Ms. Like you need to reach out to that team. You need to build those connections. You need to get yourself involved in those projects that they do. The good thing about Mars, for example, is that the structure is so flat that actually, if you want to reach out to the main manager of that team or the brand manager of Europe for M&Ms, like you can schedule one-to-one and you can ask them how things work, how can you get yourself involved. So for me, it was also a lot about after my first year deciding which path I want to take and what kind of experience I need to get to there. So for me, it's the path of general manager, hopefully one day, we'll see. But then for that, I need specific things like sales, like marketing, like revenue management as well. So it was very important to reach out to those teams and, just like applying for graduate scheme, to make an impression. And it was great for me that I got a little, like a spot in those teams that I can learn from. So it's a lot about reaching out for those opportunities.
Excellent. Thank you. Very, very helpful advice. Yes, I think was there another hand? Yes.
I have kind of sort of 2 questions for Ross, if that's okay. I'm really quite interested in working in travel or aviation as well. I was wondering, could you tell us a little bit more about that internship that you done with BA before you went on the grad scheme? And also, do you find that typically, like the likes of BA or other aviation and travel businesses, do they always tend to hire, like you have to go down to London, or do they hire any roles where you're allowed to kind of stay in Scotland if you don't want to relocate?
Sure. So just on that last question, so depending on the organisation, if I take airlines, for example, the main headquarters for BA is in London, same thing for EasyJet. So they're the main, if you look at the 2 biggest operators, that is generally where you have to base yourself. But more broadly about the opportunities within, sorry, can you just repeat the first part of the question?
Oh, I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about the internship that
Sure.
you've done.
Yeah, so my internship I applied for in the January of 2020 and was given the offer in about March. So that application process, as I mentioned, started in the October, and that's when you're going through the various stages that we've gone through. But my internship kind of got shortened in the end, so it was only, I think it was like 6 weeks or 8 weeks, when it was meant to be the whole summer, in between my third and final year of uni. And I think internships are quite key because I think if I can't remember the exact ratio, but we've recruited heavily from our internship and business placement schemes. It's a bit different for Scotland, and I know England have a sort of a preference, or can say, if you do a 3-year degree, you could go and do a business placement for a year and gain industry experience in that, and then come back to uni for your final year. Whereas I think it's not really, because you already spend 4 years in Scotland, it's not something that really comes up very often, or at least I didn't find there. But either way, great experience, either an internship or a business placement. And what we specifically have for the interns, they will carry out a project in a specific area that is aligned, or will be as can be aligned to your preference as much as possible. If I think back to what some of the interns have been able to achieve in previous years, that wasn't necessarily on my time, but they actually won an award at the Farnborough Air Show for an innovation challenge, which is really, really great to have their names on that. The name of it was To Fly to Flush, which was actually, it was from a project that turned waste on an aircraft into fuel. So they were able to work on stuff like that and get exposure, and that was really great for them. And they're now a graduate 2 years below me, I think. So there's a whole range of different projects in different areas, particularly if there's specifics that you're interested in. So yeah, thanks.
You. Any other questions? Haley.
I was just wondering, when you're at the assessment centre, so the two parts that are the most common, you have the sort of like activity, the group activity and the interview. What was your group activity, if you can remember?
So I'll go first.
Yeah,
And they haven't changed it really since I've done it. So that's why I know from having done the recruitment process for the last 2 years, like what I went for and what actually happened. They will introduce a scenario and they'll say, okay, decide between yourselves, you've got 20 minutes, and someone, like, you all know this from for any assessments you've done, but someone will have to time it, and you'll have to make sure that you have a decision by the end of it, and you're all trying to debate around it. And they will introduce certain topics or certain spanners in the work, if you like, for that project that you're trying to do. And it's how you react and how you can kind of build an argument for what you've got as an individual, the piece of information you have, and how you sort of articulate that from a group perspective. And it's quite challenging to do it. I know there's a lot of interviews now that are virtual, so trying to get that across and trying to be balanced in your answer and sort of be able to do that, it's good to have practice. And one thing I'd say on group work, please, given you're all here, I'm sure you contribute to your group work at uni, but please contribute to your project, because that makes it so much easier when it actually comes to doing work with others, So and yeah, that's what I'd definitely push for.
I think pretty similar to our process. So the group work was, again, like you getting a kind of a scenario, and you need there is a certain time and you need to solve that issue, as Ross said before. Like, this problem solving skills have to come across, right? I think what people usually think, or what I used to think as a student, is that you need to immediately jump into being like the leader, or being the one that would kind of say what the roles of the people will be and will distribute and so on. So I think when you go to an assessment center and you see that everyone has that information and wants to be the leader, it gets pretty tricky. So I would say, if you don't feel comfortable, and if that's generally something that you don't enjoy doing, you just rather be working more on the background or being contributing in different ways, you don't have to do it. They're not picking only the ones that are speaking the most or contributing the most. You can pick a role for yourself that you feel comfortable with. Like, if, for example, you like doing a bit more innovation or creativity, like, think on the spot of something that you can break a little bit that business case, suggest something new, and take that role on. Be like, I'm going to be speaking from, behalf of our innovation side of the team. This is what I'm suggesting, and so on. Like, be bold in coming up with something different that others might not have thought about, or they just want to be, forward in leading that. It's okay if you don't get to lead it. It's fine, as long as Ross said, you need to still contribute and, still say something and show yourself. And I think you asked also about the individual part, right? Or
Yeah, that's all one.
yes, absolutely. So again, it's a business case, works kind of the same way. You have time to solve it, and then expect that they can challenge you. In my case, it was halfway through, I think I had an hour, and halfway through, someone entered the room. So it was in person. Someone entered the room and said, "Oh, we have a change in our supply chain. Here is the new information that now you're working in with." So, expect that kind of things. Don't get too stuck up into calculations and trying to, solve the entire business case. Be honest. You can still present and be like, you know what, I didn't get to that part. I would have approached it this and this way, but I didn't have enough time. If I was to have enough time, I would have approached it this way. But don't think that you need to. Sometimes it's even, in purpose, that there is so much information that you just need to kind of filter it. And that's what they're looking for. Focus on the key things, do your very basic calculations and stick to that, work with that.
That Danny described it perfectly. It's virtually the same process. You're given, 2 business cases and you have to justify it. One point I just mentioned with it as well, there's no right answer. It's whatever you argue, it's purposely set up so that you get given overwhelming amounts of information and you have to, cut through the noise and make your point clear. And that's also where the opportunity to present, I know standing up in front of 100 people at uni, I did it as well. And it's it is painful at the time, but it is so worth it, because then when you get in a room with 2 people and it's senior leaders, you're like, right, I can do this. It's virtually the same. So definitely any projects or presentations or anything like that really will help you down the line.
Absolutely. I've got 2 things to pick up on there as well then. So firstly, with the assessment centres, that's exactly what I tell students all the time. So by the way, if you've got an assessment centre coming up, come see us, we can prep for it. But it's not always about being the person who has the correct answer, the right answer, the best solution, being the loudest person in the room. At something like an assessment centre, as soon as you walk in that door, you come in, you greet the receptionist, "Oh, good morning, nice to meet you." You sit down. They're watching you the whole time. They want to know how you interact with other human beings. They want to know what your dynamic is like. It's what your vibe really is like. Because remember, the person that they hire is going to be working with them day to day in the future. They're going to want to have whoever in the office that they quite enjoy the company of. So it's not always about, stressing yourself out too much to be the best, be the right answer. Because like Denny said, it could just be, I actually run out of time doing this. But in reality, this is how I would approach it if I had a little bit more time. Or I was actually a little bit confused about that one part. But in reality, what I would do is I would make sure I went and did more research before I came back to you. Or I would go ask my manager, first of all. You don't have to have all the answers. You just have to be... you should show how you would do it in practice, how you work, what your working processes are like. That's really good advice. And the second thing was what Ross said about group projects and things at uni. I know a lot of the time you get stuffed into group work at uni, and maybe you're in a team with people that you don't know very well or you've never even met. They don't respond to your WhatsApps or emails or whatever. But things like group work at uni or being in a society committee, for example, these are little microcosms of what a business is actually like. It's got, people who work on the event side of things or the social side of things or the treasurer, So being involved in these projects, these little mini groups, are ways to demonstrate your prowess in the workplace through things you've already done before. So you can use all this stuff going forward. And I think that's really good advice from both the alumni in a practical sense of how to do that. So keep that in mind.
Maybe I thought of something that can be helpful for you guys, but very quickly, also don't be afraid to show your personality. I think as an example, it's a very common assessment center question of if you've got $1 million, you won the lottery, what would you do? And I've been to a few assessment centers that people try to show off with that answer. I don't know, I want to invest in stocks. And I'm not saying this is a wrong answer. However, you also have an opportunity here to show who you are. And as Craig said, like these people will be probably working with you, right? So you know what, like if you enjoy traveling, you can say that you want to go to X, Y, and Z destination because that's your dream. You want to buy a new bike, whatever makes you happy, that would get them a bit of sense of who you are and that you're not all trying to give the right answer. So make sure that you also use this opportunity in assessment center to show who you are and your interests and your hobbies and what you love.
Definitely. The only other thing I'd add to that is that it will help if you go in and try and be, this is really easy for me to say, and just be relaxed. Like, I think actually when I went in for my interview, I was just excited to be there at that point because I was like, do you know what? I've gone through all these hurdles to get here. The fact that I'm even here in this assessment center was like a less than whatever % chance. I'm just going to enjoy it. And I think that helped me really like a lot in that point. And I know it's not easy to just say yes, get into that state or, whatever for that. But it's as much as you can try and like make sure you sleep well the night before, or not even the night before, but prepare yourself. Make sure you eat well. You in preparation for it. It's not just on the day. It's just trying to get you into a point where you're prepared and good to go.
Absolutely right, and that might help with your question as well about anxiety or nerves or about performance and controlling that and things. Whenever any student gets an interview or an assessment center or something and comes to talk to me about it, the first thing I say is, well done. Because a company is not going to waste their time giving you the assessment center, giving you the interview, putting you through to that stage if they don't already like you. They already think you're good. It would be a complete waste of their time and resource to do that otherwise. So if you do get to that point, be rest assured that you can do the job and they think you can do the job. Your role on the day is just to prove it, and just show them that you're the person that you said you were on your application. They already like you at that point. So some things that can help the nerves a little bit to sort of be like, imposter syndrome is real and we all have it, but there'll be dozens, hundreds maybe of people that did apply for that role that didn't get the assessment center. So you are there for a reason. So remember that as well. Have confidence that you're there because you're good enough to be there. That's really important. All right, any other questions? Yes.
So we're obviously here to talk about graduate schemes, but I was wondering if you guys were aware of any other routes that graduates might have taken to get into your companies?
Definitely. There's a whole host of entry-level roles throughout any companies, and I think we were talking about this before the session. Most graduates don't go into graduate roles; they go into roles that are entry-level, but also can they add just as much value. And if there's an area that you specifically want to do, for example, revenue management, there has been people who have come directly into revenue management. They'll have an additional 3 years experience versus me, who has gone through the graduate route, and there's no right or wrong when it comes to that. There are plenty of roles that will give you just as much experience and exposure in a specific area that you want to do. And it's not necessarily based on a recruitment cycle of, all the grad schemes open at a certain time of year or, October, November time. And then when it comes around to, later on in the year. So there's definitely opportunities across. Also, just from experience of other people or my friends who graduated at the same time as me, they went and did different jobs, for 6 months after uni, and then got a role that they really, that they loved to do as well. And it's not necessarily about, graduate schemes are great, but even if you get to the end of uni and don't have anything lined up, there's a whole host of opportunities, and it will work out.
Yes, absolutely. Keep your eye on job postings about entry-level positions, and also keep in mind that, as Ross said, graduate program is not the only way. And at the same time, I'm working alongside colleagues that started at the same time as me, but didn't do the graduate program or did it for a year, and they just thought that's not for them, which is also fine. And we're in the same team, might have a slightly different experience, but we're all working towards the same goal and same purpose, and we're equally motivated and happy in that place. So don't be discouraged if that's not, something that you get in, or that's something that you just simply don't want to. There's plenty of other ways, and also during graduate program assessment centers, you can also ask those questions. Or if you get, hopefully not, but if you get a rejection letter, you can still reach out to them and say, hey, I'm so motivated about this company. I enjoyed the assessment center, despite the fact I didn't get in. what are the opportunities, what are the job openings. There's plenty of ways to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Be bold, I think, is what I'm taking away from all of these different answers. Is you just have to be that person who's willing to just do it, because most people won't. And Ross said there a bit as well about, don't worry if you don't have the grad scheme lined up. For example, if you're in fourth year about to graduate, because the graduate recruitment cycle happens in the autumn time, so October, November time. You don't have to be a current student to apply for a graduate scheme. So you could graduate in, say, June, whatever it is, you graduate as an undergrad. And then you could apply in the next cycle, in the next autumn. So do something else in the meantime. Build up your skills and experience in other ways. Take a break. You've been studying for years. Take a break if you have the means to do so. But you can apply after you graduate as well. So don't stress yourself out if you don't get it first time round. Because lots of people don't. But it's about how much work you're willing to put in to get it in the end. All right. Wonderful. Yes, another question.
Hi, Ross, once again. How did you get to your interview for the graduate role?
So it was in 2020. Yeah, it was in 2020, and like the stages that I mentioned before, it was applying in the October, I think, of that year. Just to confirm, if anyone does want to apply for our scheme, it's now November, I think, or October, November time. So it gives you a bit, like, the window's open a lot for a lot longer. The internship that was advertised is basically the Future Leaders internship. So it's a direct pipeline to the graduate scheme, and they will interview all interns off of when they complete their time there, and decide whether or not they get an offer for the graduate scheme. So the process to get in was very much like if you're applying for a graduate role, and I think a lot of organizations do that so that you have the same comparison. The interview was almost identical as far as I was aware. Like,
any other questions? No. All right, that's perfect. Well, normally I'd be like, none, but actually you asked loads of questions, which is great. So thank you very much for that. It's really, really helpful to get some insights into the room as well. So what I will do now is draw the session to a formal conclusion. I would like to thank our alumni very, very much for being here. Give them a round of applause. And yeah, we try and run sessions like this as often as we can, just to give you guys lots of different insights and experience. So do keep an eye on our events pages, keep an eye on your emails. I know you get a lot of emails, and some of them aren't as important. It's just sort of operational stuff. But if you see an email from alumni relations or careers, it's usually something we really want you to do and get involved in. So read it and do it, please, if that would be possible. And yeah, just thank you very much for being here today. And we will be around for the next, wee bit to answer any questions as well. So thank you very much for coming, and we hope you have a good rest of your afternoon.
thank you all, and thank you for having us, Craig and the alumni team. It's been great to see you all. If you have any questions specifically, feel free to message me on LinkedIn or as an email. Happy to do that. But I don't know if you can.
I think you've said it perfectly well. So reach out, guys. And we're going to be here for a bit. But thank you for having us, and thank you for coming.
And remember, the employers are out in the foyer as well to speak to. They've got lots of freebies. One of them even brought free chocolate, which Denitsa didn't even do from Mars. So go speak to them. They've got live opportunities, chat to you about how to get into their companies, good graduate companies. So we're here for you. Go do it.